I think there is a lot of joy that comes from creating your own stories, but I understand there are many challenges along with it, like self-doubt, time management, or struggling to be consistent. With that said, I still did update and create comics such as my long-running action series called Save You Fair, my Instagram comic, Apple Doodle, where I create stories based on events that have happened to me in real life, a one shot completely done in ink for the month of Inktober back in 2023, and recently a silent manga one shot I had finished earlier this year and is also completely done in ink. In those years of burning the midnight oil, producing, creating, and drawing comic, I did pick up quite a bit of wisdom along the way that has helped me not only start many more comic series, but also helped me through the slog of creating long episodes and continuing to create while feeling unproductive. Just to put out a disclaimer, I am approaching this advice as someone who has drawn stories as self-fulfillment after my 9 to 5 job. At this point in time, I don't monetize or profit from my comics in any way, so this isn't a video on how to turn your comic into a profitable business. Before diving into the tips, I want to acknowledge that webcomics of any sort are a massive project. So unless it is your full-time job, or you have some kind of paid contract in place, you'll need to figure out a workflow that works best for your lifestyle and to be able to sustainably fit it into your schedule. Webcomics is a very, very long marathon, so comics should be treated as such. And it's definitely not a get rich quick scheme. If you wanted to be rich, there are far faster ways to become rich, and you would definitely not choose to become an artist if that is what you really wanted. And another point I'd like to make early on is that if you do not enjoy drawing this for yourself when you're not getting paid for it, or have any type of monetization attached, you definitely will not enjoy it when you have it as a source of income. On to the tips. It's gonna be lots of yapping, so I'm just gonna throw in some speed paints in the background. Number 1, you will never feel ready or good enough to start on your project. When you begin your webcomic series of your super personal and precious idea, you want to shoot for the stars and make sure it's the best version your comic can possibly be. And also that is planned for 300 chapters. We all have that long running series that we enjoy reading and just have that itch to aim just as high. When you begin your series, where the heck do you start? Actually, let me pause the speed paint and illustrate the cycle for you. So here you are. You begin your series. 4 chapters in, you improve both as an artist and a writer, and that you don't like your chapters anymore. You reboot. Now you work on the reboot for 20 chapters, and you find out you wrote yourself into a corner. You reboot. Now this reboot is 10 chapters in and a new idea came up. You reboot again. If you're anything like me, I go all in on every project, and in turn, I put such a high expectation on myself from the get-go, even when I have no idea what I'm doing. I was not ready to swallow the hard pill that sometimes I needed to let go of overanalyzing the detail and just post the darn episode, or stop with all the freaking reboots. Do not fall into the trap of restarting your comic every 6 months, but if you create your comic by failing forward and you feel it looks like poop, just redraw it when you can. You will always improve, and that is a 100% guarantee. Webcomic is one of those things where you learn on the job or learn by doing. You will always end a drawing or a panel having learned something new. It's like drawing that background you never would have otherwise drawn until you looked up a reference for it for a specific panel you planned for, or that facial expression for a scene, or creating personal shortcuts for anatomy you wouldn't have otherwise learned if you were just filling out sketchbooks all the time instead of drawing the comic. You tackle learning certain art techniques and have a project done, and that's like hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. And in the same vein of always learning something new, there will also always be something to improve on. I get it. When we have a project and vision, we want it to be as best as possible. Everything from the art style, paneling, script, plot, that all has to be perfect and we won't settle for less. That sounds like a lot, but that's also completely understandable, especially since we pour so much of ourselves into a story. We can manage this in a couple of ways. The next tip I have is normalize starting with smaller projects. If you have a story idea that is extremely personal to you and you cannot completely shake the perfectionist in you off, sometimes starting smaller and shorter ideas will help you learn until you can tackle your bigger project. One shots are generally done in one chapter and there's way less personal investment in the project, but you can still get the same benefits from learning while drawing. Simply normalize experimenting with smaller comic projects so you can focus on nailing down your art style, workflow, and finding your writing style. You cannot improve on an idea or yourself if you never executed it before. Plus, starting and completing a project is a very good feeling. Even if you end up not happy with the end result, you definitely learn something from it, and you can take it to your eventual larger comic series. In a similar vein, my next lesson is that it is okay for comics to not be good. Is my art good enough for a webcomic? Is this interesting? Am I ready to start? These are all questions I hear when artists are aspiring to begin a comic. And there are so many videos out there that will simply tell you, just draw the comic now. And, okay, well, yes, that's true. But when a lot of them skip over, it's not the push to begin your comic has to start with yourself. If you're asking Reddit or other people, am I ready to start my series? Then I have to ask you, why are you asking for other people's permission to create your story? If your reason for creating is to get that external validation, it's gonna be a very, very rough road to keep yourself going. The largest reason that stops people from beginning their comic is the fear that they aren't good enough, or that very overwhelming fear of the F word, failure. And when that failure metric is tied to numbers, it's just a recipe for having a bad relationship with your comic. Oh, I'm going to learn how to draw environments and then I'll start my webcomic. I'll wait until my drawing style improves and then I'll start my webcomic. Let's be real. You ain't going to start that webcomic if you keep moving the goalposts. These are just coping mechanisms to stop you from starting. I think it's a good idea to define what failure is, and personally, I think someone truly fails if they completely give up. Social media has made us truly underestimate how much it takes to put ourselves out there and all the work behind it, to the point where we deem drawing 10 episodes of a comic is deemed a failure. We need to stop shaming ourselves and embrace that sometimes we won't make good work, and that we are here to create and improve. It is okay to not be in love with every single panel or brushstroke we make. However, it is important that it is completed and not perfect. This can also be applied to writing. It is also okay to have bad ideas. This idea takes the pressure off of the writing stage and keeps you going, even through a writer's block. Most, if not all of us, have the tendency to be precious or perfectionist over our writing, but I personally do best when I'm just letting myself write to my heart's content. Most of the time, my best ideas come up during a shower. My favorite tip that stuck with me is write from your heart and edit with your head. So don't be afraid to keep track of all of your bad ideas. Your comic will never be perfect. What's important is that something you created exists. Perfectionism is truly the enemy of completion. So in other words, yes, I am telling you to start your comic now. So actually I had like 5 more tips to share, but the video was going to be extremely long, so I just decided to split it into 2 parts. Don't worry, I'll post the next part very soon. If you have any questions or want me to cover any additional topics regarding webcomics and webtoon creation, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you have your own theories, you are also welcome to share them in the comments. If you want to hear me yap more about webcomics, or watch my drawing tutorials, or just simply watching me doodle away, if that is your jazz, feel free to hit that subscribe button. I will continue to make these art videos. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope to see you in the next one, and wishing you an absolutely lovely rest of your day. Bye!